Okay, guys. All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah, so I'm Lieutenant Commander Joe Sarisky. I'm a National Park Service Public Health Consultant for the area there. All right. Yeah, so I'm the public health consultant for National Park Service. I'm responsible for 19 parks and monuments for the whole state of Arizona. Relatively new to the role as far as backcountry. I did one river trip last year. And so, yeah, I'm here to talk to you guys about some bat, public health, and at the end, there's some Coconino County data on rabies and some stuff like that to also review. And also a disposition for me specifically, when I got in, I didn't really know what backcountry was necessarily. And right from week one with my boss, he said, hey, you're in charge of all backcountry for the whole nation. Good luck. I don't know, anybody, raise their hands. Anyone know Ronan King from previous life or anything like that? Okay, so I'm the new Ronan King to put things in perspective, if that makes sense. Nobody can match his energy and everything else that he's had over the years, because he sounds like quite a character from what I heard. So why talk about bats? Bats play a crucial role in maintaining healthy ecosystems. They themselves are park resources and as such are something to protect as part of our agency's mission. And something I learned that they pollinate a lot of plants. They're affiliated with the agave and that whole pollination upon my research and connecting with all the biologists for this presentation. Flying mammals, pollinators, insect control, economic contributions to agriculture, and amazing adaptations. One thing I learned while being on the river and just being with the Grand Canyon so far, there's bats everywhere all the time, so it's inevitable. So it's nothing that we can prevent. They're with us. And so I'm going to hopefully get us through a lot of the slides here today and kind of understand what we can best do and suit ourselves for bats and interactions with humans. Some species live in large colonies. As I found as a biologist, there's around 1,000 different kinds, different breeds and everything across the board. And you'll see some photos. This one here isn't really accurate of what you may see, but there's other ones out there. I know there's one I had to remove because there's a vampire bat, which sounds pretty bad, but it just uses blood as a source versus the other bats that we see. So this one here, I think the part I want to make is this picture here. This is a bite bat on a finger. It's really hard to see, almost nothing at all. So what counts as a bat-human interaction? So it's direct physical contact with a bat. Next slide, I'll get in more detail exactly what that entails. So bat landing on a person, a bite, a scratch, contact with clothing and skin that can't be ruled out. Why this matters, bat teeth are small and they can go unnoticed. You may never even know if you got bit by a bat. So here we go, getting some bat photos going here. So rabies can be transmitted from the contact with an infected animal's saliva or other animals and humans. Any mammal can get rabies. The most common wild reservoir bats, raccoons, skunks, foxes, and coyotes. And there's a whole bunch of data I pulled from all county levels from all Arizona, and bats were one of the higher ones for most of the state. Probably because of Grand Canyon, maybe, for a lot of the activity. Typically, less than 1% bats are infected with rabies, and rabies can be transmitted to humans through saliva, bite, or scratch, and we previously identified. And something that I found fascinating about some research and connecting with some biologists, that typically only 1 or 2 bats per year test positive for rabies at the Grand Canyon. So that's less than 10% of bats associated with bat interactions have been collected and tested for rabies, and only about half of these were rabies positive. And that's 2023 data, so things could have changed since. So as I talked about, when is bat contact a potential rabies exposure? So we have known contact, right? So something, a bite, a scratch, something physically happens, runs into. I know we got a report last year that somebody was sleeping outside. It was nighttime and something wet hit their face, mouth area, somewhere around there. So wasn't sure what it was. It's nighttime, probably connecting the dots of bats. So that was something that we reported as a human bat interaction. So any direct physical contact. And then the next category up below is contact that cannot be ruled out. So you're sleeping in your tent or you're somewhere in an enclosed area all night long. You have no idea if the bat touched you or not because you're asleep. We also have the bullets of person unable to communicate. if they're nonverbal, a child, or someone who's impaired of some sort of influence and they're unaware of their surroundings. And then while this matters, bat teeth claws are very small, as we discussed with the picture of the photo of the finger, and bites and scratches may not be seen or felt under certain circumstances. Rabies prevention following exposures. So one thing that is big with us that we push pretty hard is the 4 C's. Is anyone familiar with the 4 C's? Have heard this before? So it's collect the bat safely to be tested, contact the disease prevention program. That would be, that's this website here that connects right to our epidemiologist directly, so you can report anything that happened or occurred. Clean, so clean the contact, the wound for 15 minutes, and consult a healthcare provider. We also want to put in here, we don't want visitors or guests to collect the bats. I know bats are small, they hit and go, and it's pretty unlikely to catch one for most circumstances. So we don't want to have visitors collect the bats for that reason. Avoiding contact with bats as best as possible. And yes, so immediately wash the area with soap and water for at least 15 minutes. Call dispatch, report the incident, and then work with EMS to receive proper guidance on medical advice. I know that's something we've been working on for a while because before it was kind of a different communication system. Since I work with other parks that do river trips, I was trying to coordinate the best possible plan for everybody to identify what's happening, what's occurring, and get it to the right people quickly. Because I know some concession leads are on the river all the time. So if that's the point of contact, it's hard to get that out. So it makes more sense to respond to dispatch or whatever the system may be for smaller parks. Bad behavior, environmental risk factors. So this is something I learned from the biologist more so recently. So artificial light attracts insects. So bright lights in camp will attract your aquatic and terrestrial insects and may increase the likelihood of bats foraging around camps more often. And that's pretty common. I know we've all been there before. You had a light on, and all of a sudden, all these bugs you didn't even know existed are floating around your light. So that results in more bats flying around to eat. So signs of an unhealthy bat. I know some of us probably are well aware of this, but if they're active during the daytime, not dusk, not evening, and those little middle points I like to call them, but broad daylight. Abnormal sensitivity to light and sound. Appearing sick, grounded, unable to fly normally. So these are all factors that stick out. Disorientated, trouble flying, which I know I've had some conversations that can also be affiliated with young bats and new bats. So they're new to flying, so they're kind of all over the place, kind of like a little drunk bat floating around. And then something else I found fascinating. I don't know how realistic this is, but that even they suggest snoring may attract the bat. So if you're a heavy snorer and you're outside with no protection, that it could possibly attract the bat. So don't forget to bring your sleep apnea to the river trip.
CPAP. CPAP.
Yeah. On the river. There we go.
Like half the guys in
And then for another statistic here, we have bat behaviors associated with artificial sounds. Documented 85 cases of rabid bats attacking people, predominantly involving loud noises associated with the victim. Hence the snoring potentially. I don't know if we can all see this wholeheartedly. This is some of the Coconino County data here. Let's see. So I don't know if you can tell here, but the ones that sticks out to me is commercial river trips. We had 40, so we had a total of 64, just to break this down and keep it simple. I don't want to bore us with numbers today. 64, 100%, 40 of which were commercial river trips. So that's 62% of all rabies exposures, like we discussed what rabies exposure means. And then another thing that I thought was fascinating upon looking at this is the sleep during exposure. We had 13, so nearly 20% of all was while asleep. And then the one that stuck out to me, to all my team here, is how we had a 0 for those that slept under a net or some sort of barrier. So we thought that's kind of fascinating as far as sleeping setup and stuff like that. And I know I'm going to get some rolling eyes on that concept and that coming up. So we can save it for questions and everything like that. And then this right here is pretty fitting and pretty standard. River trips start, and then when they end, this seems pretty on point. I do have some curiosities and maybe questions. Time we can get some options on why July is a high peak. maybe more river trips, maybe more activity, maybe more whatever it may be, and we can discuss that when we get to it. So this part here is talking about the PEP and receiving PEP and the time frame. So we had 54 people that got age-rig of the 64. So that means 64 didn't. And that could be, it was bat contact that was on the foot or lower extremity or something like that, not neck or head where it's more severe. They could have already had PEP in a previous job. If they're a biologist or something working with animals, they may have got PEP, pre-PEP in advance. We had the maximum time that was a little scarier was we had 13 days right here. That means when they had the bat contact, they didn't get the PEP until 13 days later. Usually, depending on where it is and how severe it may be, 72 hours or less, you got to get that checked and get the PEP in. The average time was 2.4 days, which is just about where we want to see it. And that's about all the information we have for this as far as when we go on. And this last year, this is just something I wanted to show. It's indicating bats, which is the purple dots, and all along the river. We have one dog and one unknown, which for all we know could have been bat. But this is just something that Coconino's building. It's something that I've been trying to work on progressively. Try and document every time there's a bat-human interaction and try to determine mile markers where there may be a greater congregation of bats and maybe figure out spots and locations to skip or go down a little further. But like I mentioned when I started, bats are everywhere. It's inevitable to avoid bats completely. But if there's a spot where, let's just say, mile marker X has a bat-human interaction, evacuation, whatever it may be every time, well, maybe we can skip down another 5 miles, wherever it may be, that may be a little more suited for that. All right, any questions? And this isn't Grand Canyon bats, so just not to freak everyone out.
You have questions? Yeah, in the back.
Yeah. We have there first?
We have one in the back, and then we have done.
All right, back first.
Very commonly you see a flying relevant the next is because of the decrease extension of bats, we're not getting all these records back then, and just wondering we're in this the public study of rabies.
Can you restate the question too?
Yeah, can you say it one more time? Trying to get all the facts here. So,
awareness we're putting on bats, that the increase in the frequency of bat contact is so elevated, so quickly here. It's simply have a PR issue with publicly aware that the remote area versus
okay, yeah, I get you. So it's funny you say that because some of this graphs and things like that I've seen about bat, the human interaction, I think it was even, it's called COVID and under, almost nothing was reported. But all of a sudden it was brought to everyone's attention, and like 2022 had a skyrocket of bat interaction with humans. So I think a part of it is some of my job, public health, explaining, hey, this is an issue and this is something we need to be aware of. Some of the slides, it's 100% fatality, depending on neck, head, bite. If it's rabid, which is also another part of it, like I've explained, like 2% bats in a whole year are actually rabid. But I would have to agree that I think it's education and knowledge that we're putting out there to make people aware of bats and human interaction and trying to avoid as best you can, because we don't want to live in the world of what could happen. We'd rather be prepared and take all right precautions immediately versus, oh, it's no big deal type of mentality.
Has there been, or is there a correlation from, I think it was like our 2019 when we had such a white nose disease break out with the bats from New York and they found them in the Grand Canyon? Is there any correlation to this uptick in rabies or anything from that segment of the bats, or maybe it's more of a biologist question? But
yeah, it might be more of a biologist aspect. The only thing with white nose is it's kind of spreading and killing off populations. And I don't really think it's replacing or doing anything extra with the rabies aspect as far as what they got going on there. But yeah, I can look into that and ask my biologists because a lot of their slides had white nose stuff that I kicked out. Yes, in the middle. This one here? Yes, yep.
Sleeping on the boat. Sleeping on the boat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe sleeping on the boat and just being out in the open more. I think in my theory too is maybe just more activity, right? So visitors settle in, they're at camp, they're sitting, they're laying low as you guys have a lot more work to do, bringing things in and out and about and more active. And I don't know if this is true. Once again, I've only been on one river trip, but I've noticed some spots where it's more of an open, wide beach area with a lot more bug population, just more open space to fly. There's a lot more flying through camp that I'm ducking and diving and avoiding. But when it was more of a canyon with tight walls and smaller, it wasn't as bad. They were kind of away and on the water, not by camp. But once again, that's one trip under my belt, so maybe I'm incorrect on that. Oh, yes, green shirt in the back. I think that needs to be administered by a.
Will you restate the question?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So you're asking about having pets with you, correct? Like the vaccine on you on site? Yeah, my understanding from all the medical side and epidemiologists is it takes a few doses and it needs to be administered by a medical profession and other sorts of items with it to maintain its, temperature or whatever it is for the shots, and it's a few doses out.
I'm just a little curious about your role, your military.
Yeah, okay, I can break that down. Elephant in the room. So, I'm a public health officer, so I'm a branch of the uniform services, and there's 17 of us for the whole national park side of it. So my job is I go to all my parks and I do food safety. So I check all the kitchens and things like that, Grand Canyon, Glen Canyon, things like that. And then I do all the water, wastewater for all the big parks. So I'm checking that aspect. And then obviously backcountry. And then anything else that comes up on park property. So rabies, hantavirus, foodborne illness outbreak, anything like that is all my responsibility. Little side quest here. Two things that popped up on my radar for backcountry, which doesn't go with you guys. Alaska wants to know if they can use salt water to do their warewashing and all that kind of business. So there's that concept I'm working on education. And the other one is Mount Rainier, I believe it is. They want to use snow melt for all their activities. So I needed to have discussions on that kind of use. Just kind of give you an idea of a day in life of many of new projects and things that come up.
But you're not DOI? Or
I am,
okay.
but in a uniform, military looking, which could use people in landlocked states.
Are you a medical professional?
No,
This is not personal. I'm just really curious.
I'm an environmental health
Okay.
side of it.
Okay.
So I work with my epidemiologist a lot. She's in Utah, which I could put this up now in the question. This is the contact information for Amelia. She's our epidemiologist for all things, all matters. And then the email address below is everything her and her boss get, and then my captains get. And then on the right side is the Coconino contact information for those that have the data there. Sierra is the one who put the statistics together, and Jacob's the boss. They both work together on this kind of stuff too. Does that answer the question of who I am and what I'm doing here?
Yeah.
We have two more questions. I think it's Ian in the back. And then we'll go over there.
Yeah, we the right side.
Is that map that you had all the
So all right, the question is bat interactions. Is this the map of all of them? I believe so. The issue I had was I don't have ArcGIS on my computer, so I can only zoom in this map so much, and it was cutting things off because I wanted to try and really zoom in a lot to be able to identify each mile marker or something like that and see the count. I do have a GIS background, so I feel like I could get that lined up and maybe make a bat density map of some sort if I can at some point and work with others on that side of it. Let's get some overlay.
Yeah, to the public.
Yeah, I could share this with you guys in PDF format. I think even the Google Chrome. And share that to however you can get to distributed. I don't know how many goes, but I can definitely share it with you so you have that information for 2025. We'll get some front row here.
So we operate within the commercial operating requirements. There's been a lot of change to those, like with the BAT protocol. Last year it was, if it was video on the leg, you had 72 hours to get out. If you had a face, you had to get out that day. For the helicopter evac or whatever. And then this year it changed to just wash it and polish and both the sides up. And I was wondering if you could speak to the influences that maybe you guys changed that protocol.
Can you
Right.
restate the question for the folks in the back?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question is why the changes of a bite on a leg was 72 hours to wash it and fill us in, and all that kind of adaptation throughout the past year, let's call it. The best way to answer that, we're currently still working on it. What's happening right now is our EPI team is communicating with a national EMS team. Because before, like mentioned, and even pointing me out as not a medical profession, is we want to make sure EMS is given the medical diagnosis from satellite, whatever it may be, of, yeah, that needs to be the evac. Because one thing that we notice is there's a high evacuation numbers that seem to be excessive and maybe even just fear driven, kind of like the education element we mentioned earlier that, oh, a bat hit me, I got to get out and it rubbed the foot or something like that, where it isn't severe if there's no marking. And that's kind of the questions we asked right away. Was there a bite? Was there a contact? Was there an abrasion, a micro abrasion of some sort of anything like that? Were you able to catch the bat and it's acting abnormal? Then it's okay. Then we need to jump on it the next thing. So we're still working. I can't give a clear cut answer because we're still in the process of editing chapter 5, which is our backcountry chapter, of the proper way to go about those. And as soon as we get it, I can share it with everybody and distribute that in chapter 5. Back right.
Rodeo. Is there any talk about what we need to do to prevent this activated? There's less of that going on. Any like benefits
Okay, so the question is, you want to know about vaccination for guides beforehand? Okay. So my understanding is, as I was told via boss and everyone else park-wise, being new to this, I'm still learning here. If you're a biologist and you're handling animals all the time, then you should get it because you're going to be out there. I have kind of resisted and said, like we see the stats, right? The high number of the guides, that maybe we should reconsider that. And the pre-PEP is given initially. Because one thing that was brought to my attention, I had some discussions with my epidemiologist. If you have a bad interaction and you get out, let's say it's not severe, it's something on the arm and you're fine and you go ahead and get the PEP. Well, you're about 7 to 12 days, I think, you need to be off the river because you need to get the shots at certain intervals. And that might mess up your system because when the season starts, from my understanding, it's go, go, go. There's not a lot of gaps like, hey, I'm taking a week off in the middle of the busiest season. So that's one thing, too, that brought to my attention. So you're now talking about like work loss of getting out there and doing your thing, when if you had it in advance, you would avoid it. And that's something I'm going to bring in our next backcountry meeting and have that discussion about, should we reconsider this or not? Because the other aspect of it is expensive. Depending on where you go, it can be anywhere from $800 to $1,200 for the full cycle. And if you have 10 to 15 guides, that adds up a lot of money quickly as far as that. So that's kind of the discussion we're at, the cost and then work loss kind of deal there. Does that answer the question? Or okay.
Last one.
And I'll be hanging out here all day the rest of this. So if you have other questions, you can come up to me too. I'm not just going to run out of here. Yes.
If dogs are all required by law to get a rabies vaccination ahead of time, why aren't people?
Dogs are more valuable.
Well, this is why I wish the biologists were here with me. because they can answer this, or the veterinarians that we have at the service. I feel like that's more, and I worked on the Navajo for a summer, and we did rabies clinics. We would set up at spots and give the rabies shot to all dogs and cats. And I'm not really sure how to answer that, other than dogs are out in the world a lot more and cruising around, and could get in a situation where they come across a rabid skunk, a rabid raccoon, and things like that, where humans, I mean, I know this is a different audience here, typically aren't out in the woods. Maybe not.
Know your audience.
Yeah. Thanks.
We have one more, or we gotta stop?
We gotta stop.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm sitting over here.
Yeah.
Joe. Thank you.